Good evening. It is Monday, September 22nd. My name is Eric Wiedeke, and welcome back to another episode of Marlins Monday, following a 2-week off hiatus. Got a little bit busy with the Dolphins season starting up, but with the Marlins on a run like they are of late, I could not help myself here in coming back to talk a little fish baseball with everybody. Before we do get started, I just want to remind you guys to like, comment, and subscribe on the video and 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. It does help what we do here, covering the Marlins, the Heat, the Panthers, the Hurricanes, anything South Florida sports, really. Inter Miami, if you name it, it is covered here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. You can follow me on X/Twitter at Eric Wiedeke. That is at Eric Wiedeke, exactly how it is spelled in the bottom left. I do just want to get into it here. A lot of exciting stuff happening for the Miami Marlins of late, winners of 10 out of 11. And believe it or not, mathematically alive. I think anyone, if you would have told them that the Marlins would be entering the final 6 games of the season, still in playoff contention, slim odds and all, regardless, I think anyone would tell you that it was a wildly successful season. Even more so, I think, when you consider the amount of wins that have kind of been left on the table this year with this group. But a lot to be excited about for this ball club as they start up a series against the Philadelphia Phillies tomorrow night. And one of the big surprises is surprise returns. You have Griffin Conine returning tomorrow night from a shoulder injury that he suffered in early April. Immediately, the reaction was he's out for the season. There was not very much credence given to the idea that he may return at some point this year, so credit to him and his doctors for making sure that he rehabs and gets himself right to get back to the ball club, at least to give them a glimpse of what he could be in 2026 and beyond for this ball club. And I do just want to touch on some things that he did in Jacksonville. I think, one of the most impressive things that I've seen is he came back, and on his rehab assignment, he did not miss a beat. OPS well over 900 for the Jumbo Shrimp, hit 291. In 11 games, he had 11 walks to just 9 strikeouts. I mean, you talk about a guy that hadn't seen pitching at a serious level for, 3, 4, 5 months, and he comes back and, he's just so dialed in at the plate with his discipline and the pitch recognition. And that's one of the big, exciting things. Got Austin here talking about the fish to the playoffs. Stranger things have happened. I'll just leave it at that. It's probably going to take a 6-0 record with the Mets and the Reds and some other teams kind of falling back, but stranger things have happened, and this is unironically one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. And you're getting a guy in Conine who's been absolutely locked in over his rehab stint in a way that I think translates itself pretty nicely to the big league game with his pitch recognition and the way that he's been seeing the ball in the zone. And then you're also getting Edward Cabrera back, who, I think everyone kind of collectively resigned themselves to the idea that he was going to need Tommy John surgery maybe 2 weeks ago. And for him to come back in these 2 weeks and to start tomorrow night, probably going to get 2 starts before, by the end of the season. He would be in line to start, I believe, the final game of the season against the Mets. It's just kind of a surreal story for Cabrera as well. It kind of felt like a carbon copy of what happened to Sandy in 2023, where, he had the elbow kind of bothering him at the beginning of September, and, they try to stick it out with him, and ultimately he gets Tommy John in October. But Cabrera has recovered really well over these past few weeks and is healthy enough to start. And if he gets through these final two starts and he's okay and he can get to the offseason and have those couple months off of rest, to be going into next season with a rotation headlined by Sandy, Cabrera, Weathers, Perez, not to mention guys like Snelling, White, Braxton Garrett's going to be in that mix. It's just, it could be an embarrassment of riches for this team, going into next season in the starting rotation. And they're all finishing really well and some really encouraging play down the stretch here. Austin. I just kicked myself out. That's so funny. Austin talking about it being a testament to their grit. That they're 4 back with 6 to play. I mean, yeah, this is a team that could have gone from 16 under to 500 to back down to 16 under. They got back down another 10, 11 games under 500, and here they are now back to 4 games under, 76 wins. Already 14 more wins than they had last season. There's a real shot they get to 500 this year, which I think is a miracle in and of itself with this ball club. And additionally, you look at how it's being done. Some of the performances that I do just want to talk about that have kind of happened down the stretch. You look at Sandy and his second half resurgence and how he's been looking a lot like the pitcher that we saw 2-3 years ago from him. You look at guys like, I look at Troy Johnston, had a really, really tough start to his major league career. But now you look over his last 28 games, he's hitting .320 with an .898 OPS, 4 homers, 11 runs batted in. Connor Norby, you go to his last 15 games, which includes a few before his most recent stint on the IL, he's hitting .320 with an .898 OPS. You look at Augustine Ramirez over his last 11 games. He's hitting .318 with a .936 OPS and a couple of homers. So they're getting contributions up and down the lineup right now from guys that presumably you want to see continue to play well going into 2026. Guys that you're factoring into potential, lineup configurations for next season. And again, you also have a guy like Jacob Marcy who really has been consistent. He's been a rock for this team since he's come up. Just a really good hitter, a guy that's going to give you a 300 plus average. OPS is always going to be pretty high, up in that 900 range, going to play a really good center field defensively. And, again, there's no Kyle Stowers here. You're looking at a lineup that is missing your best player overall, your centerpiece. And it's kind of one of those things where it's a missing piece kind of scenario where, you have Edwards, who's a really nice complementary piece. You have Otto Lopez, who is, I would argue, probably the ideal kind of stopgap shortstop. I think even calling him a stopgap is probably selling him a little bit short. He's a guy that's a 4 or 5 WAR player, over 162 at shortstop. You've got guys like Augustine Ramirez and Jacob Marcy. And when you put it all together, it's a pretty good lineup. I mean, Johnston, he's going to be a guy that you have to at least consider factoring into your plans at first base next year with the way that he's finished out this season. Who knows what Griffin Conine is going to look like when he comes, in his final 6 games. Although I would caution people to kind of take it with a grain of salt one way or the other. 6 games is still a tiny sample size. But you look at what he's done, and more importantly, I think the way that he's done it in Jacksonville, with the discipline kind of at an all-time high for him, because he's always been a guy with a lot of swing and miss in his game. And I think that now that he's really starting to draw the walks and kind of show improvement with his eye at the plate, He's a guy with a lot of really, really solid raw power. He's always going to hit the ball hard. Um, and I think that's something that you can't teach. But if he can learn how to become a really good hitter in the midst of that, and then, some of that raw power just kind of comes naturally for him, he's a guy that's could also be a guy, hitting 270, 280, 25 homers as a corner outfield guy. And then you feel really good about your outfield offensively. And the last thing that I did want to touch on is, Barry Jackson had a very good piece in the Herald the other day. And one of the big talking points there was what the Marlins intend on doing at third base in the offseason and going forward. And, he mentioned that they're not really going to add at third. It's going to be internal competition between Connor Norby, Graham Pauley, and to a lesser extent, Maximo Acosta. Although I think with Acosta, he's going to have to really improve with the bat if he wants to, really make a run at that spot. Because I think guys like Pauley and Norby have shown to be competent with the bat. And in Pauley's case, he's shown to be probably a Gold Glove caliber defender at third base, which, I don't think gets enough love for a guy like Pauley. I mean, he is just absolutely locked down at the position. So I think it's a good, healthy competition to have Norby and Pauley. And then when you just kind of look at what's all coming together for this ball club, even if they don't make the playoffs this season, which, again, not very likely, probably not going to happen. But you look at the way things are kind of coming together, and, you look at a team potentially next year where you've got Joe Mack at catcher, you've got Troy Johnson at first, Xavier Edwards at second, Otto Lopez at short, one of Norby or Pauley at third, Marcy, Stowers, Conine in the outfield. Maybe it's Heriberto Hernandez DHing. Maybe it's Augustin Ramirez DHing. Maybe it's Troy Johnston DHing and Augustin Ramirez playing first base. But the point is, you're looking at the lineup, and I'm not seeing a ton of holes there, at least in terms of guys that, like, oh my God, this guy's coming up. Your rally's over. Like, that's not going to be a thing with this team going forward in 2026. And you look at, when you combine that with what you could have in the rotation, and you combine that with a bullpen that I think is going to at least have a solid foundation between guys like Henriquez and Cade Gibson and Tyler Phillips and Anthony Bender and Calvin Fauché. I mean, that's 5 guys that I think you trust going into next season. I think you'd like to add another lefty. If I were to add anything to this ball club in the offseason, it would be a closer. But I know there's a lot of people that, on face value, are just against paying relievers in general. And to the credit of those people, you look at Tanner Scott and how poorly a deal like that has aged, and kind of the variance that relievers have from year to year. I think that there's probably maybe a really high kind of 99th percentile guy that is immune from that. But if you're not paying for that and you're paying for anything below that, I wouldn't pay those guys. So I think that just having the solid basis that you have for the bullpen is really exciting heading into 2026. But really, the final message that I want to kind of have people hone in on for this ball club in 2025 and beyond here is, especially as you see these last 6 games with Conine, with Cabrera, with Sandy, with Perez, with some of the younger players kind of getting a chance to play together, and keeping in mind that Stowers isn't back yet, is this is kind of a glimpse of what the next year could look like for the Marlins, just with Kyle Stowers and potentially with a Robbie Snelling in your rotation, potentially with a Joe Mack playing catcher. So while this team could very well win the next 6, I mean, they've won 10 out of 11. Who knows? I don't think the Phillies are playing for anything really. I think getting a chance to end the Mets season is always fun. It's always great to kind of put the last nail in the coffin of the Mets and their annual September collapse. I think that's great. But I would just keep in mind, I mean, this is going to be a glimpse of what this team could do in 2026 and beyond. When you take a look at this roster over the next 6 games, this is kind of a lot of your core going forward. And I think that's a really encouraging thing when you see the way that these guys have played through September and the way that they battled at the end of the year. I mean, the fact that 80 wins is on the table is just absolutely ridiculous with this team in the best possible way. And I think that it ought to get you excited for what could happen in 2026 and beyond with this group. But that is all I have for today. Just remember, guys, do comment, like, subscribe. It does help what we do here at the channel. My name is Eric Wiedeke. You can follow me on X/Twitter at Eric Wiedeke. And I will see you guys next week with a final episode. We'll run down some of my preseason predictions, see what was right, see what was wrong. Potentially break down a wild card matchup, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. But we will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. See you next week. Bye-bye.